How's it going? Today I'm painting Zulfiqar the Spirit Sword from the Middara Kickstarter expansion. This is the first of the figures from the Kickstarter expansion that I will be painting. The first paint I am using is Dryad bark from Citadel Paints. This is going on the base layer of the figure. It can be a pain to paint these little tiny areas in between the bandages and the outside of the spirit sword. I tried to get most of the coverage that I could, but I definitely had to go over these areas a few times, especially once I started getting in the other colors and seeing how I can get this model to match the art in the art book. The next paint I'm using is Zamesi Desert from Citadel Paints. This is going on the inner parts of the sword next to the Dryad bark color. This sword alternates between brown and yellow, kind of on the inside, more golden, with a white outside. I am working to get more of these painting videos out on the channel, but it does take a bit of time. Please consider liking and subscribing for more of these videos and unboxing videos and other sorts of tabletop hobbyist videos. I'm also painting the hilt of the sword the same Zamesi Desert color as the rest of the sword. This is to keep the look and feel of the entire model the same without having too many colors. Yellow is a tricky color to work with as it tends to leave blotchy gaps everywhere with just one coat. You need to have multiple coats of paint here to really get that vibrant yellow color. Common adage here on YouTube is 2 thin coats. Well, in this case, I would say 4 thin coats. Next up is Celestra Gray from Citadel Paints. This is going on the outward portions and the blade portions of the sword as kind of a contrast to the darker brown and kind of the more offset yellow. Normally when I'm painting figures, I do have a handle, but when I was painting these figures, I had misplaced it. I do not know where my handles went, and having to hold this little figure and paint like this is definitely more of a chore than just popping on a handle and being able to turn it with ease. I highly recommend having a handle when you paint your figures. The next paint I'm using is Baneblade Brown from Citadel Paints. This is going on the bandage portion of the sword, as the sword is kind of wrapped in a bandage or some sort of cloth material. And it looks a little bloody or something, so the first layer I'm going with here is kind of a light brown. Kind of go for the darker used bandage look, and I'll be following it up with some other colors later to make it look a little more bloody, more battle used, battle tested. Be sure to check out my Instagram, where I post pictures of my completed figures and other figures in my collection. Link is in the description below. A fun part of painting these figures is the level of detail in the miniatures. From a grayscale, it doesn't seem like there's that many areas you need to paint, but as you start layering the colors on, you start to see different parts of the figure that you hadn't seen before. And the bandages were a big part of that for me. When I was starting to paint the brown on the figures, I kind of had an idea of where the bandages go, but then I kind of followed the bandages as they wrapped and coiled around the sword. The next paint I used is Spaceship Exterior from the Army Painter. This is going on the eyeball of the sword, as the sword has an eyeball on either side of it with a red glowing iris. And it's very small, so don't need to use a lot of this paint. Generally, it's good to use off-white instead of a pure white, as pure white can be hard to paint with and doesn't show a lot of contrast, where just a little bit of darkness in that white, kind of making it a little more light gray, really brings out the other colors on the blade and lets it stand out from the Celestra gray on the outside of the sword. For the base of this figure, I'm starting with some Dawnstone from Citadel Paints. This is just giving it a nice start for a stony look. In the artwork, the sword is kind of embedded in a stone of some sort. So I'm trying to go for a stony look, a field maybe where there's some stones that it maybe cut in half, or a cobblestone path or something like that it just kind of crashed into. Switching back over to the bandages, I'm going to be dry brushing on some pink Horror Citadel paint. This is to give those bandages a more textured feel. I want to make this sword look and feel like it just got done with a big battle and it's just resting, or that it's been on a long journey and it's remains pristine despite having these kind of raggedy bandages, clothes, if you would even want to call them that. For the eye, I'm going to be using Khorne Red from Citadel Paints. This is to give it a red iris that is in desperate need for some eye drops. Also kind of lends itself to the battle-weary sword kind of resting itself after a long battle. Going back to the spaceship exterior from the army painter, for the center of the eye, to give it the eyeball looking feel instead of just a red dot in the middle. I want to paint some parts of this sword gold, so I'm using metallic gold from Vallejo. This is thinned with a Lamian medium. Using a medium with the metallic paints helps it get a nice, more even coverage instead of having it glomped together. That's definitely been a problem with me in the past, and I find that Lamian medium has been pretty good. There are other mediums you can use. Water also works, but I like using this Lamian medium with metallics. Another trick I like to use with metallic paints, especially gold, is to have a yellow base. The Zamesi Desert paint from Citadel has been very nice to use as a base coat for metallics, so I can use a very thin layer of the metallics over the Zamesi Desert, and I still get kind of a richer gold yellow color that is also quite sparkly. I'm back working on the base with some Celestra gray that I am dry brushing on. This is once again to give it more of a stone feel. And by dry brushing on, I can still leave some of the bottom layer on there, while kind of adding more wispy, kind of lighter gray on top of it. It gives a nice stone effect. Remember, when you dry brush, you want to have a lot less paint on your brush. I kind of went a little more on this because I wanted to cover more surface area. But looking back at it, I would probably use a little bit less of it just so I can get more of the Dawnstone beneath it to show through. I had a little more paint left in my brush, so I went over the edges of the sword again, just to give it another small coat of Celestra gray. Funny story with this paint. This is just Craft Smart paint, Burgundy, that I used when I initially started painting my Middara models, and I want to keep the red bases of the enemies similar, so I have to keep using this paint across all my models. I'd like to move on to an actual Citadel or Army Painter red, but I got to keep these all similar, so keep using this Craft Smart. It's very thin, have to use multiple coats. Then for the allied Spirit Blade that you can summon in the game, I used flat black for the base. This is just flat black from Vallejo, and it goes on very smoothly. I'll be using a matte varnish to protect this paint job on the entire surface, because these figures are meant to be played with, and they're going to be played with. So I want to keep the paint job nice and crisp without ruining the color scheme. And now for the reveal. This is Zulfiqar the Spirit Blade fully painted. Thank you for watching my Zulfiqar figure painting video. I really enjoy painting these on camera, just so that I have a frame of reference for future paint jobs where I could do better, and to give people online another view of model painting, because it's a hobby and I enjoy it. But thank you for watching. Have a good one.